Good day and welcome to another episode of Relevante. Our guest this evening is Mr. Matt Flavel from Asatru Folk Assembly. So warm greetings to you, sir.
Greetings to you and your audience. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much for spending your time with us. We greatly appreciate it. And my co-host this evening is Sigtyr again. So warm greetings to you, sir.
Thank you, and hello.
So, Mr. Flavel, could you please introduce yourself for our audience?
Certainly. My name's Matt Flavel. I'm the Alsherjergothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Basically means I'm the high priest of the Asatru Folk Assembly. I've been actively involved in Asatru for a little bit over 19 years now, and I've been running the Asatru Folk Assembly for about 5 years.
Could you please tell us a little bit about how you became interested in Asatru?
Well, I was raised, as is becoming very normal in the United States, as generically Christian, but my family didn't attend church. We weren't active growing up, but if you had to ask, my family would have described themselves as Protestant Christians. I've always had a desire for spiritual things. I've always had a need to be fulfilled spiritually and religiously, and that wasn't really satisfied as a young man. But my aunt's family, they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and not really being aware that there was a lot of options for, a young white man in the United States, I assumed Christianity was what there was. And so one thing I respected about the Jehovah's Witnesses is they read their Bible very thoroughly and they took it very seriously. So I became a Jehovah's Witness for a short time when I was, towards the end of high school until I was about 18. And I read my Bible and I read it back and all the way through. I think 3 different times trying to make things fit. I assumed that, when in doubt, the God of everything was probably right and I was probably wrong. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make it fit. I couldn't believe that the God of the Bible was the God or something I wanted to be a part of. So when I was 19, I finally had to make that break. I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and I came to the realization if the biblical God was right and everything else was damnation, I'd still have to choose damnation because I couldn't stomach the value system of Christianity. And that was a really scary place, but I found myself still needing that spirituality and feeling unfulfilled. So I looked into what our ancestors had. And I started researching, Norse mythology and things of that nature. And I came across this group, the Asatru Folk Assembly, and it surprised me. I thought I was the only person who felt like this. And, I found out there was a group of people who were actually, I think at the time in 2001, were still practicing Asatru and the belief in our ancestral gods. And I was hooked from then on. It was fascinating to me, and I tried to get as involved as I could.
Could you explain the value system you discovered in the Bible?
Yeah. It's a value system based on weakness and based on defeat. And one thing that speaks to me about Asatru is it's a value system based on victory and based on winning and based on trying to be strong and proud. There's a lot of nice things in Jesus's Sermon on the Mount that are nice and care for the downtrodden. But if you read it critically, it celebrates everything that's weak and everyone that's, that loses in society, instead of celebrating heroes and winners and people that accomplish great things. The value system in Christianity that talks about pride and how man should be saved by faith alone, that none should boast. Our gods want to be proud of us. We want to rise to be worthy and to be thought well of by our gods, by our ancestors, and by our community. Christianity wants to take away any amount of individual pride in oneself and give it all to the Christian God. One thing that concerned me is if you looked at the God of the Bible that's always portrayed as a father, and you conceive, of us as his children, if a human father behaved that way, we'd be appalled. If you wanted to take credit for every accomplishment of your children and push them into the back when they won an award and take credit for it, it'd be very petty. If you're the God of the entire universe, for you to steal the accomplishments that us mere mortals would make, that really offended me. Whereas I want to present our gods, Odin and Thor, I want to present them with my accomplishments and a resume of doing great things, that hopefully they would be proud of me, that hopefully they would find what I've been doing, worthy to make them appreciate it. So that difference was really important to me.
So how did Jehovah's Witness, the organization you were a part of, how did they react when you left Jehovah's Witnesses?
Not well, but understandably so. Jehovah's Witnesses, and there's other Christian sects that do this, but they're kind of noteworthy for it. Almost like the Catholics, they excommunicate you. They do what's called disfellowshipping. And that means that Jehovah's Witnesses if a person is disfellowshipped, they're no longer to have association with that person. So my aunt's family and we were very close, and, they're prohibited from having contact with me. The other practitioners that I knew that were Jehovah's Witnesses aren't supposed to talk to me, because in their church terminology, not only was I disfellowshipped, but I'm an apostate, which means it's not just that I stopped being a Jehovah's Witness, but I actively pursued something else. And a lot of people are very offended by that. But if you believe in their worldview and you believe in their God that demands their exclusive worship, it's understandable.
Yeah. So are your aunts and her side of her part of the family, is there still Jehovah's Witnesses today?
Well, something interesting about Christianity, and certainly about Jehovah's Witnesses, it seems like the more serious you take Christianity, the more difficult it is for people that want to have a life that they enjoy to stay with it. What you see in Jehovah's Witnesses is a lot of old people and a lot of very young children. But it seems like people need to leave the church as adults to live a full life, and then they come back to it. My aunt is still a Jehovah's Witness. She's, stop to think, I think she's in her late 60s or early 70s now. But her children have fluctuated in and out. The family has not really maintained their Jehovah's Witness practice as a whole.
Okay. And did you join Asatru Folk Assembly as the first Asatru organization?
Yes, I did what a lot of people do. I sat and I watched for a time. Certainly in the United States at that time, there was a number of different organizations that claimed to be Asatru. And so I observed and I tried to, figure out which one was the one I most identified with, or the one that was doing things right. And time and again, the Asatru Folk Assembly really spoke to me. So after a few years of watching and observing and listening to the videos and talks by Steve McNallen, I enthusiastically joined the AFA, and I wanted to be what we call a folk builder for the area I was in. I was born and raised in Alaska, and so I became the folk builder for Alaska and part of Canada shortly after joining the AFA.
What is a folk builder? Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So a folk builder is the AFA's regional representative in an area. They're the face of the organization of the Asatru Folk Assembly to local people, and they're the face of that local membership to AFA leadership. So they serve as that local point of contact to kind of build an area and build membership.
And then you live in Nevada, if I'm correct?
Yes, my wife and I live in Reno, Nevada now.
Okay, but there's not like a kindred in Nevada, is there?
Not yet. That's something that my wife and I and a friend of ours are talking about that recently moved out here. We currently don't have a kindred in Nevada, but I'm about 2 hour drive from Odenshoff over in California. So a couple of times a month we drive over there, and get together with folks.
Okay, so what was the state of Asatru Folk Assembly in 2001? I mean, wasn't it a bit smaller and perhaps not so professional as it seems to be right now?
It was back in 2001. The AFA, they had members a lot of different places, but the activity in the AFA was largely centered around Northern California. I believe the AFA at the time had one national event every year, and that was, I believe at that time, that was Winter Nights in the Mother Lode, which is a mining area in Northern California. It was much more local that way. Membership was smaller. It was basically Steve and Sheila McNallen doing the bulk of the work out of their home. And yeah, it was also at that time it was a lot of single guys, not as many families. And the scope of things was certainly much smaller then. And like I mentioned, there was competition between, at the time, the Asatru Folk Assembly, the Asatru Alliance, the Odinic Rite, and then on the far extreme left, there was the Troth.
Mm. Did when you told family and friends that you became Asatru and you became a member of Asatru Folk Assembly, did anyone express concerns, or maybe they thought you were some kind of white nationalist or whatever organization? Was there anything like that back then?
Well, at the time, the racial element wasn't as obvious as it is now. Back then, the accusation of it being a white nationalist organization wasn't, I don't think that was in people's minds. So I didn't get pushback on racial issues then. What I got pushback on, it wasn't so much that they were concerned as much as I don't think they took it seriously for a time. They just thought it was some phase or some silly thing I was doing, and they didn't pay it much mind for the first couple of years.
What are your history in the Asatru Folk Assembly? What led you to become Gothi in the Asatru Folk Assembly?
It was very important to me. Like I'd mentioned, I've always been a very spiritual person. I wanted to pursue that. I tried, and it just didn't fit in Christianity, and that was very frustrating. One thing we say in the Asatru Folk Assembly is it's about roots, it's about connections, it's about coming home. And what we hear very often from our members when they join is that they feel like they came home. That's certainly what I felt when I joined the AFA, when I became Asatru. I felt finally I was at home. This was right. These are my gods. These are my ancestors. And so I wanted to do as much with that as I could. I wanted to serve the gods and my folk as best I could. And that first manifested as becoming a folk builder in my area. And as time went on, I wanted to devote myself to that in a bigger and more important way. And so I wanted to study and learn and become a Gothi so that I could serve the AFA as a priest. And I ended up getting my ordination in 2010, if I recall.
Mm. So I was looking at your website, and it seems like the structure is like, I mean, there are members and then there are kindreds. I mean, and I just watched the Facebook Q&A you did like yesterday or 2 days ago, where you talked about you could be like a solitary member, and you could also be a member that had this kindred. So you have 25 kindreds, and every kindred has like a leader, a folk builder.
That's a little bit misleading. So we do have 25 kindreds that are official AFA kindreds, and their structure is a little bit different. Very often, our kindreds tend to be led by a folk builder or a gothi in the AFA, and that's more of a function of that person is so enthusiastic that they've taken it upon themselves to build a kindred around themselves. But I wouldn't. Sometimes we have kindreds that spring up that don't have a member of AFA leadership. The thing is, kindreds are such a powerful expression of AFA loyalty that typically if someone's in a kindred or forming a kindred, they also want to volunteer for the AFA in a bigger way, and that leads them to becoming a folk builder. But that's not required of an AFA kindred. But we have kindreds around the world. We have several international kindreds. But we also have a lot of AFA members that aren't part of a kindred that just meet up with their local kindred or meet up with local AFA members and celebrate and practice and worship our gods that way.
Okay. And then you have these gophers, which are something similar to a priest. So you must be a folk builder first before you can become a gopher.
And that's something that we've just introduced this last year. Our new requirement for you to become a gothi or a githia is for you to first become an oathed folk builder. And that means spending at least a year folk building and showing that you're able to put in the work to become a gothi. It's very important that our priesthood isn't about academics or study of the lore solely. You need all of those things. But it's also about showing that you can counsel, showing that you can help support your community, and that you can help build the AFA. It's not just an academic exercise. It's a position of service to our gods and our folk.
So you have to prove that you are a leader in spirit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how many gophers, as I mean the male and the female version, how many do you have at the moment?
I want to say that we have 10 that are currently ordained.
Okay. And they are the only ones who can perform ceremonies like bloats and things of that nature?
All right, I did a quick count while we're talking. We have 12. They are not the only ones that can perform those, but they are the preferred ones to perform those. When we're talking about Asatru rituals, certainly other people, by necessity, if there's not a gothi or a githia in their area, you have individuals performing bloats or conducting religious rites. As far as certainly in the United States, our ordained gothar have the rights that any other ordained clergyman would have, such as they can perform legally binding weddings. They have access to hospital situations where only family or clergy are allowed to participate in things. So it's a legally recognizing situation when they're ordained by the Asatru Folk Assembly, here in the United States at least.
Does it count in Europe, for example?
It depends where you're at. I can't tell you specifically the European Union's rules on what counts as clergy and what doesn't. We carry in the United States what's called a 501c3 designation by the IRS, which makes us an officially recognized church. And that gives our ordained priesthood specific, I guess, powers that are legally recognized. Those rules vary depending on what country you're in. So I think that varies place to place worldwide.
It's like in Denmark we have Sigtyr, who have the legal rights to perform weddings and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any kindreds in Denmark, don't you?
We don't currently have any kindreds in Denmark. We have 3 kindreds in Sweden, and we have 1 in Norway.
Okay. Do we have members in Denmark?
We do have members in Denmark.
Yeah. Okay.
Steve McNallen and myself and another friend of ours, we actually went to visit AFA members in Denmark in 2014, and it was a very special trip we had.
Hmm. So in terms of structure, so those priests, male and female priests, they can then ascend the ladder and then become a member of a sort of a council, where according to your website, there's like a council for you to use, which consists of a law speaker and 2 Vitans. How do you pronounce that?
Witten, and it's an Old English word. It means an assembly of wise men that would advise Old English kings on matters. And yes, so we do. The elders in our church, we have, and the website needs to be updated. We actually have another member of our kindred, or of our Witten, that's a returning member. But yes, those folks, we meet and have calls every two times at least a month at minimum to discuss AFA business, to talk about all of the practical nuts and bolts things that go into running the Asatru Folk Assembly, but also to talk about matters of theology and ritual and the direction of the AFA.
Hmm. So what are the individual members and the members in the kindreds, what are they allowed to do on their own, and what do they have to ask permission for?
There's a tremendous amount of freedom in the Asatru Folk Assembly. We think that's very important, and we don't believe there's only one right way to do things. There are many right ways to do things, but we also believe there's a lot of wrong ways to do things. As far as what they're allowed to do, where we really insist on having a say, is what they're doing that represents the AFA. If you're going to put the AFA's name on something or speak for the Asatru Folk Assembly, we want that trusted to our folk builders and people who are official AFA representatives. But the nature of how widespread we are compared to our number of Gothar means that individuals certainly conduct some of their own rituals. We try to get them in touch with local Gothi or local Githya so that they can have guidance on how best to do those things.
Okay. Do anyone in Asatru Folk Assembly, do they work full time, or is it everything done in a person's spare time?
I am the only person that currently works full time for the Asatru Folk Assembly. We have a lot of people that put in a full time equivalent worth of work, but I'm the only one that does full time AFA work at present. We do have some people that are retired that have a lot of spare time that they can put into volunteering for the AFA, and that helps us a lot. But as of now, I'm the only full time employee of the AFA.
Is there some personal requirements to be a member of the AFA?
Yes. We ask that anyone who applies for membership first goes to our website, www.runestone.org. And there we have our declaration of purpose, our statement of ethics, and our law of the hall. And we ask that people read those and be in agreement with them. Membership in the Asatru Folk Assembly is only for legal adults, so people need to be over the age of 18 to join the AFA. It's just for people who are, we are an ethnic faith, so it's just for folks of obvious ethnic European ancestry. Heterosexual members, and importantly, members that practice Asatru and that believe in and worship our gods.
Have anyone tried to make some sort of case or whatever, or make some sort of fuss about perhaps some black person has tried to become a member, and then they could make some case out of it or something? Has anyone tried to do that?
There's a lot of fuss. As far as making a case, certainly in the United States, we have a legal right as a recognized church to have whatever membership requirements that our sincere belief requires. So we're capable of having those requirements for you to join. But yes, we have people always looking to raise a fuss about any issue, and certainly race is a hot button issue that people raise fuss about these days. The issue with sexuality has also been something that people have raised a fuss over. But more often than not, when we've had people apply who didn't meet either of those criteria and they've asked questions, they've responded best to just an honest answer that's straightforward about, their lifestyle or their, characteristics not being acceptable for membership in the AFA. And they've genuinely been appreciative of an honest, straightforward answer on it. But those issues are few and far between.
So it isn't an issue. You can say openly that you only want people of European descent and but the heterosexual people, and it isn't against the law in the United States.
No, not for membership in our church. Certainly not.
Okay, interesting. I think it would be against the law in Denmark, actually, discrimination law.
That in the United States, that tends to apply to businesses. If there was an employee-employer situation, or if we were selling a product, that's different. But as far as a church, you can have whatever standards you'd like on that.
Okay. I don't know actually if it's the case in Denmark, but I think so, maybe. So interesting.
So when you become a member, is this like a prospect period where you can be thrown out, or how does that work?
So when you apply, there's a certain amount of time that the local folk builders will, perhaps give you a phone call and try to interview you and learn a little bit about you to make sure it's a good fit. But in general, no, there's not a prospecting period. If we find out at any point in time that we do not want to be associated with you, then we'll cancel your membership and we'll move on and you'll move on. If there's any time we have a member that feels they no longer want to be a part of what we do or no longer wants to be associated with us, they're free to quit at any time.
Does that happen a lot? Are many people leaving or being kicked out?
Being kicked out? No. We have, because we still draw from we draw from a lot of people that are searching for things. Sometimes those people don't find what they want and move on. We've gotten a lot better. We get a lot more mainstream members of society, but we do still get some people who are kind of on the fringes, and those people tend to be a little bit flaky. So we do have people that join and then find out it's just not for them or not what they had wanted.
So do you pay like a subscription once you become a member?
Yes. The basic level of membership is $10 a month. But what we've tried to do the last 2 years, and it's very important to us, is to move our membership towards paying what's called the hoftoller. And that's basically a percentage-based giving, to where we'd like for our members to give at least 1% of their income to the Asatru Folk Assembly. And that has really enabled us to do a tremendous amount more in the past 2 years.
What kind of people are members of the AFA? Is there specific age or gender or social class?
Well, that's one of the great things about the AFA in 2020 that's increased since when I first discovered the AFA in 2001. Originally, there was a lot of younger men, kind of more fringe element at the time. It was much more of a fringe thing and less mainstream. Now we have one of the big things in the last 4 years has been the increase in families. Anymore, I couldn't say that there's, what your average AFA member looks like. We've got men, we've got women, we've got children, literally of all ages. We have quite a few of our elders, both male and female, around as part of the Asatru Folk Assembly. And we have people from all different backgrounds. We have a lot of blue collar people, but we also have white collar people and professionals. We have We have people in the AFA from all walks of life, and kind of across the experience of being our folk. So wherever we have our folk, it seems like that's fertile ground for the Asatru Folk Assembly to have members, and that's really what we want.
But isn't most of the members like rural people who live outside of the big city centers?
I wouldn't say that. I think there's a tendency of our members to like that. I think the way the world is now, the cities tend to promote values contrary to ours, and leadership structure in cities tend to have values that are unrecognizable to a lot of our people. So I think our people identify with a more rural existence. But no, we have members, in cities. We have members out in the countryside. We have members all over. A lot of our members are just trying to live and get by with their jobs where they have access to work and where they have a cheap place to live. And sometimes that does put them in urban environments as well.
So how many members are there in the organization in total?
736.
That's pretty good. So is the membership growing, or how is that at the moment?
Yes, the membership is doing really well. It's growing amazingly the past few years. Been very successful, not just with the number of our members, but with how enthusiastic they've been. We've really seen a boost in enthusiasm these past few years. And, we have members in 16 different countries now. So that's been a newer thing. It's only been the past, I don't know, I'd say 6 or 7 years that we've really had a significant international membership as well.
Do you have any idea why the membership and the quality of people is improving and growing?
I think I think there's many factors, to be honest. I think in Asatru and in the AFA, we've done a lot of development and a lot of growth. I think there's a certain learning curve and a growth cycle on, when Asatru got started back in the 1970s. Between then and now, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of development, a lot of learning what works, a lot of learning what doesn't work. I think that at an earlier time in Asatru, there was a focus on differentiating ourselves between how not Christian we were. And I think now our focus isn't about comparing ourselves to anyone else, but about how positively Asatru we are. So I think there's a spiritual maturity in our religiosity. It's not, young guys beating their chest, acting like Vikings. Now it's families and people trying to practice an ancient ancestral faith of our people. And I think that's become very appealing to a lot of people. Certainly success breeds success. So the more successful we've been and the more we've found success, the more we've grown. And certainly now that we have 3 hofs, that's brought a lot of people to us. That's really shown that it's a real and a serious thing. And I think the more we take ourselves seriously, the more others take us seriously. But I also think there's some things outside. I think anyone who's been observing over the last 10 years, and certainly over the last 5 years, have seen how very polarized this world has become, certainly in the West. I think that there's not a lot of middle ground anymore, and there's a lot of forces that have become very extremely cultural Marxist, and it's pushed a lot of normal people that wouldn't have considered Asatru into stopping and giving a look at something that our ancestors would appreciate instead of the new world that's being offered to us that a lot of us reject.
Mm. Yeah, definitely the anti-white propaganda or anti-white narrative is getting worse, I guess you could say, all the time. So I guess it only makes sense then when there's like a social force that pops up some resistance, pockets of resistance against this whole anti-white narrative that you hear in the media and academia and so forth today.
It's unfortunate for society, but it has been very helpful for the Asatru Folk Assembly because it's caused a lot of our people to wake up and pick a side on issues that are important to our people. Whereas before you could kind of skate by and it wouldn't affect you, the degeneration in the world around us, it's shocking at this time. certainly in the United States, the world around us would have shocked and appalled our grandparents. Just wanting the values that our grandparents had now makes the media label us horrible, bigoted, terrible, evil people. And that's just not true. My grandparents weren't evil people. I don't think your grandparents were evil people. I don't think the entire Western civilization up until, 2015 were some kind of horrible, evil people. That's just not true.
So the whole situation in the Western world right now, with the polarization of the left and the right, and also in the religious community, maybe it's a good thing, I should say, for the Asatru Folk Assembly. Do I think it could lead to a kind of heathen revolution of some kind?
I certainly hope so. I'm always open to that possibility and open to that idea. I would love for our people to reconnect with our gods. And, that's kind of what I've devoted my life to doing. So yeah, I really hope that these times cause our people to reflect and to come together, worshiping our gods and re-embracing our ancestry and who we are and where we're from.
So, do you actively try to recruit members, or do members come to you through the website or through family and friends who are already members?
Yes. First of all, yes, the vast majority of our members come from word of mouth, or they've Googled us, or they've found us on their own in some way. We want to make sure the message gets out there. I think there's a lot of people in Asatru that think that proselytizing or going out and spreading Asatru is some kind of a horrible thing. I'm not of that mindset. But that being said, no, we don't actively go out and, stand on the street corner or go door to door. But we do want this to be out there for people to see. I hope with this broadcast, people can Google it and find it. With the internet and with social media, our message really does get out there quite a bit. And we do have people that come to us through interviews like the one that we're doing.
Yeah, I read that you did a speech at a countercurrents event, and that was a way to try to recruit, or at least promote, Asatru Folk Assembly.
Yes, promote certainly. I was invited to come speak about Asatru to the Northwest Forum a number of years back. I've been to a couple of those events. Very nice folks up there, and it was a good chance to speak to some of our folks and let them know about the option of Asatru and hopefully to bring them home. And that was successful. We got a number of members out of that.
So, do many couples meet each other through Asatru Folk Assembly?
If you would have asked me that 5 or 6 years, or would have asked me that maybe 7 years ago, I'd say no. But increasingly, yes. And that's been a really special thing to see. As a matter of fact, I met my wife at an AFA event in 2014. And so that's been very, very important for me personally. But we've seen a lot of relationships and a lot of families started through the Asatru Folk Assembly. And it seems like that increases, every few weeks I'm finding more people who've gotten together through the AFA.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you do marriage through AFA, and is your form of marriage different from the marriage agreement you can do with the government? Because in traditional Christianity, you can't just get divorced for no reason, but you can get divorced for practically no reason today if you have a marriage agreement with the government. So how are your version of marriage compared to those two extremes, I guess you could say?
Well, I think with anything in Asatru, when it comes to marriages, it's an exchange of oaths, and it's a very serious thing. In this day and age, there does not seem to be much impediment to divorce, and there's no additional one that the AFA can impose on you if you get divorced. Certainly we don't, kick our members out if they find themselves in need of a divorce. But we do encourage people to live up to their oaths, and we try to counsel couples to work through problems. The legal binding of an AFA wedding is just the same as any other governmental wedding, certainly here in the United States, and I would imagine internationally as well. But it is something we take serious, something that it's not some fun Viking themed silliness. In the AFA, a wedding is just as binding as a wedding in a Christian church environment or as any other legal binding wedding. The vows that are made, the documents are signed. We have to register, those things with the local legalities of where we're at. So it's just as legally binding as any other marriage. I suppose it's just as non-binding as any other marriage as well.
So do many of your couples get divorced? How is the divorce rate in Asatru Folk Assembly? Do you know anything about that?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's the first time I've been asked that question. I don't have any reason to think it's statistically higher than any other place. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably less if you consider people who met through the AFA. And I think the reason for that is that if people meet in the Asatru Folk Assembly, in our church environment, in our common religious values, that's something you can build a relationship and a life on. What we see a lot of divorces happening on is when people grow in different directions, or when they don't have that really core level of commonality when they get together. So I think, if anything, it's probably better than it is in the rest of the world, just because there's that shared value system.
It's a traditionalistic value system.
Yes, absolutely it is. Yeah. We don't try to, pretend LARP any supposed Viking debauchery or anything. Our value system arose out of our folk soul and out of our people, and it's very much the value system that's defined Western civilization.
Mm. So you actively encourage couples to have children, and perhaps you talk to them about not using contraception or something. Well, how detailed do you get in that matter?
We absolutely encourage children and families. That's essential. At the most fundamental core, in order for Asatru to continue to exist, ethnically European people need to continue to exist. In order for our gods to continue to be worshipped, they need, our people to still be around. So families are absolutely essential. But in order for us to be successful in the world, we need families, and we need to have more of us and build our communities in an organic way. So we always talk about the importance of children and the importance of families. We don't get in a couple's business and, talk to them about not using contraception or about, how many children we require that they have. But we certainly celebrate that. We celebrate every new AFA baby that's born. We send them a blanket. That's something that our ladies have started to do. Every new AFA baby that's born, our AFA women, they make them a nice baby blanket, and we send it to them to let them know that the AFA loves them and appreciates them, and kind of welcome that baby into the world, knowing that they're a part of the AFA.
I think I saw at one point, do you have something called Mother of the Year?
We do not. That's something we've talked about, and that would certainly be something we're open to. Like I said, family is such a huge part of the Asatru Folk Assembly, so we try to encourage that any way we can.
So, what activities do you do together as a organization and as these kindreds?
Number of different things. Kindreds certainly get together for a lot of things. Kindreds will do everything from religious rituals and studying our Lord to getting together to go for hikes or go bowling or go watch a movie or whatever else they want to do. It's really a tight bond of friendship and a family. As far as the AFA, we have a number of different things that we do. Religiously speaking, we get together, we perform bloats, we perform sumbles, Often we get together to have remembrance dinners for different heroes of Asatru. Certainly a part of our culture is feasting together and getting together to share a meal. That's kind of the basis of most of our ritual, is the idea of that communion of things, that sharing. When we do bloat, we share our energy with the gods and they share their energy with us. When we do a sumble, we're sharing our energy as a group by drinking out of a communal horn. And when we get together and feast, we're sharing a meal together. So that's a really important part of what we do. But we also try to get together for physical activity, to go for hikes. Often we'll get together and have campouts and things. The AFA has 4 national gatherings every year. In 2021, we're going to have 5. We're going to try a new national gathering in the Pacific Northwest in the United States. But those are the kind of things we get together and do. Very often we'll get together for picnics or barbecues so that we can celebrate our gods and talk amongst each other and really build our AFA family.
So I read something about that you do these kind of food drives. Well, could you talk about that activity?
Yes, it's important that we're part of our communities. I think it's really important that the AFA doesn't, just hide out in the woods somewhere. We're proud of who we are, and we want to be a good and beneficial part of society. So at Odenshof in Brownsville, California, we've partnered with the local food bank. And I'm not sure if that's something that our European audience is familiar with, but it's a charity or a series of charities here in the United States that provide food to poor people who are down on their luck and are having trouble finding food for themselves and their families. So we have used our hof at Odenshof to once a month have a distribution to where the community can come and get food for themselves and their families. So we've been doing that for a year and a half now, and that's been really, I feel it's been very helpful for our community. It's certainly something that's been helpful for us as the AFA to get a chance to do. One thing that's really important about that, we've talked about the state of the world around us a little bit in this conversation, but our people have a lot of opportunity to complain or to feel grumpy about, how bad things are out in the world. What the food distribution does, it gives us a chance to make something a little bit better and to actually help people. Instead of focusing on all the negative things, it's an opportunity to actually make a difference in people's lives and help feed families. And that's really a special thing that we get to be involved in.
So how are you treated by non-Asatru people? I mean, I read some articles about you that was not very flattering, to say the least. But how does the local people treat you, and how does the press and police and the more established system treat you?
Well, I'm glad that you separate the two. To start off first, absolutely. I don't think that we're capable of getting an article that's positive about us. I think that the best that we can hope for is an article that's fair, and we've gotten a couple fair ones. But the press is looking for sensational things. The press is looking for, what we call here in the United States fake news, and to, create demons for people to get mad at out of thin air. And that's what the press likes to do. So they don't treat us very well. But for as far as regular people and actual people that we interact with, that's an entirely different story. In the communities where we have hofs and where we have a presence, I think people have treated us very well. You'll always have some people that, want to heckle or, give us unflattering hand signs or whatever they want to do. You'll have those kind of people wherever you go. But certainly in Brownsville, where we have Odenshof and where we do our food distribution, it's hard for people to think you're some kind of evil monster when you're out there helping feed the poor and make sure their community has nice things and has food to eat. People have treated us really well. Our neighbors have treated us very well. Members of the community have been great. But local law enforcement has been great as well. You mentioned the press and the overarching system. I think those are two very separate things. the press has its own agenda and they create their own narrative and their own fake news. But in these areas we've actually interacted with, when we've interacted with mayors or town council members or business people or local law enforcement, they've all treated us very nicely, very fairly, and often very friendly. So I've been really happy with the way we've been received by regular people.
Mm. So these hofs, it's quite a recent thing, all these hofs. I mean, especially the new one, Balder Hof, I guess that's only like a couple of months old, right?
Yes, sir. It's funny because they're a recent accomplishment, but they're a very old dream. When I'll read Asatru things back from the 70s and the 80s, that's always been the dream, is to have hofs, and everyone always has talked about them. But for one reason or another, they're much harder in reality to accomplish than, we may imagine in our heads for them to be. We got our first hof, Odenshof, in the fall of 2015. And then while the whole rest of the world has been doing these lockdowns and, things have slowed down with coronavirus and the response to it, in that time, we've established 2 hofs this year, Thorshof and Baldershof. So that's been a really special thing. And like you mentioned, it has only been the past 5 years that we've had hofs.
Mm. So these hofs, are they old churches that you get fairly cheap, or what kind of building are you looking for?
2 of them are. Yes, one thing, we do absolutely look for old churches. For a couple of reasons. I think that our ancestors have always tried to occupy the holy ground of any place they're at, no matter what culture started the holy spot. You kind of want to take that hill and establish and plant your flag there and capture some of that energy. But on a very practical level, churches provide buildings that are built for what we do. They're built to house groups of people, to get together for worship and to share meals together. And that's exactly what those buildings are structured for. We can very often get really good properties for very good prices because the market is very small if you're trying to buy a home. And it may be different in Europe, but in the United States, there's a lot of churches. And recently, a lot of them have become unused. Christianity in the United States has really declined in the past few decades. So a lot of these very beautiful old churches are up for sale. They're set up very well for what we'd like to do. And because there's not a huge market of people trying to buy them, we can get a really good value that way. But we're not just looking for that. We would look for any building that can serve our purposes. What's been really important to us is that the public recognize what we have as being, a real house of worship and not, just someone's house or just kind of an outbuilding on someone's property. We want when people to drive by for them to treat our houses of worship like they would any other. We want them, when they see a hof, to treat it the way they would a synagogue or a church or a mosque or a Sikh temple or a Buddhist temple for that matter. We want people to recognize it as a real thing and not just something someone's doing in their yard or in their house. So
how do you change the building? Let's say it's an old Lutheran church or something like that. So how do you change it? Obviously you would remove the crosses, but how would you else change it?
Well, that depends on the building and kind of the specifics. There's certainly, we would want to fill it with our artwork. One of the really special things about Thorshof is a beautiful mural that one of our Gothies, Svan Harald, painted. And it's a beautiful piece of religious art, and it's become the focus of that building. So filling it with art and beautiful things that speak to our lore, speak to our heroes, speak to our gods. I've always contended, even before we had hofs, that, if our people never would have converted to Christianity, we still would have had churches and cathedrals. They would just have different images in the stained glass. I think that the way churches are constructed is very much speaking to our folk soul, and it's why European churches are extremely different than Christian churches in the Middle East or in Asia or in Africa, because it's an expression of our folk soul. So, I mean, we'd find ways to change things. One of the prominent features is doing the crossed gables with the animal heads. That was a traditional practice, and we've kind of taken that on and plan to do that at all of our hofs to add a little element of that. It's also become very important for us to try to establish burial grounds outside of our hofs to where we can inter the ashes of our loved ones. We've just done that most recently at Midsummer out at Odenshof, and that's a very important thing planning for the future of Asatru.
So all Asatru believers get cremated?
I wouldn't say that, but I'd say that's certainly something that we're trying to encourage. I think that's in keeping with historical Asatru. One of the things is when you go back into the antiquity of our folk, it goes through phases, with burials, with interments, with ashes, in all kind of different receptacles. In fact, several archaeological periods of our people are defined by the cremation urns that the cremated ashes are put into. Certainly, the burning of Balder on the pyre is an example of cremation. So I think that's very much in keeping with our lore and tradition. But I also think erecting monuments and interring those cremated remains in the ground is in keeping with our tradition. So that's important for us to do, and something we're trying to establish at all of our hofs.
Do you have any plans of opening a hof in Europe or Scandinavia?
Absolutely, we do. As a matter of fact, our Swedish members and our Swedish and Norwegian members are talking about that right now. I'm very hopeful that here within the next couple of hofs that we have, that we can establish a hof in Sweden. That's one of our plans, and like I said, we're planning on that behind the scenes now. We absolutely will do that. Exactly when is kind of a question we're still open to, but plans are in the works.
So you talked about in that Facebook Q&A you did yesterday or a couple of days ago, that the next one would be dedicated to Njord, the god of the sea, I guess.
Yes, sir.
So shouldn't that hof be located at the sea or close to the sea?
As best as we can, yes. Now, we're pretty open to where the other hofs will be, but the very next hof, it does need to be in a place that's coastal. But that gives us a lot of coastline around the world to think about. I think that getting a property that's waterfront may be very expensive and out of our ability to do, but we would certainly like to get it in a state or a region that borders the water. The best that we can do that way to honor Njord would be what we're looking for primarily.
Mm. So the reason all these hofs has been created fairly recently, is that because of the prices of the churches or the other buildings have been so low, or is it become of a financial thing, or is it just because now we really wanted to do it and now we had the opportunity?
I think there's a lot of things that factor in. I think something we can never discount is because if I have to put it to one reason of why we're being so successful and why our hofs are expanding, I'll put that on the blessings of the gods. I genuinely believe that we've built a strong relationship with the Aesir, and that the Aesir are pouring out their blessings on the AFA. I honestly believe that, and that's the best reason. In a more mundane sense, I think something that's happened is I've mentioned our increase in enthusiastic members. To have a hof requires a couple of different things. It requires first the initial devotion for people to, hofs cost money. So people being willing to donate, not just with their dues, but additional donations, people willing to pay the hoftoller and donate a percentage of their income to the Asatru Folk Assembly. Money makes a huge difference, but money is not the end of it by any means. We need people who are willing to take care of it. We're not going to put a hof somewhere and then have it become derelict and unused and not taken care of. No matter if the economics are right or not, we need people there who are willing to pour themselves into it and put love into it and maintain it. And we have a vast increase in devoted members that are willing to volunteer to remodel, to clean, to care for, and to gather at these hofs. So that enthusiasm has boosted the AFA in all aspects, and that's why we're able to be successful and have these new hofs, and that's why we're going to continue to be successful.
Yeah. So in terms of kindreds, you talked about on that Facebook Q&A that you just welcomed a kindred in Brazil. So how are these kindreds created, and how are they created in countries so far away?
Well, that's one of the important things about them happening in countries so far away. The kindred is I would say the closer you are to vast numbers of AFA members, or the closer you are to a hof, the less necessary a kindred becomes. But when you're isolated, a kindred is really important because it's a touchstone. It's the Asatru Folk Assembly made manifest where you are. So what we need is a minimum of 3 AFA members who want to form a kindred and be basically a local congregation of the Asatru Folk Assembly. And if we have 3 members that decide they want to do that and show their loyalty to the Asatru Folk Assembly, they apply to be a kindred. And currently there's a 6-month probationary period before you're an official AFA kindred. We want time for you to be confident that you're in the right place and that you're truly devoted to the Asatru Folk Assembly. And we want time to see and determine whether we want the Asatru Folk Assembly to be officially associated with you and your kindred. And assuming that that 6 months goes well, then we proudly welcome that kindred in the Asatru Folk Assembly. And something that we do is we take that kindred's flag and we display it in all of our hofs. So when we're there in a temple to our gods, worshiping our gods, in that holy place, we have a flag that represents each of these kindreds. They may be around the world, but there's a little piece of them every time the AFA goes to one of our hofs.
So do these Brazilians, and I saw that you had a kindred in Italy and in South Africa, do these people come and visit you and participate in your big 4 or 5 events every year?
Well, that's one of the things, coming and visiting us, because we are them. The AFA isn't, a location where I'm at. The AFA is wherever we have our members and wherever we have our kindreds. But do they come to our local events from around the country or from around the world? Sometimes our Canadian kindred, and I know that's not much of a stretch. Geographically, they're very, very close, but they have come down to local events in the United States. We, members of AFA leadership, have traveled. Like I'd mentioned, we traveled to Denmark in 2014. Last year, a number of us traveled to Sweden, and we met with our Swedish kindreds and our Swedish members, and some of our Norwegian members that drove over. Oh, actually, as well as our members of the Italian kindred you mentioned were present at that event. So we do that as much as we can. Travel can be difficult and travel can be expensive, but it's really important to us to try to make it out wherever we have significant numbers of AFA members. Hopefully members can travel, but at the very least, leadership wants to travel and show those people that they're part of our family and that we appreciate them.
Okay. So is there like a normal evolution of the spiritual side? I mean, do some of these priests and the leadership of AFA, do they ever come up with a new ritual or a new ceremony or a new prayer or something of that nature?
Absolutely. It's more modifications of things that we already do. I think that there's always an evolution of the best way to do things. I think something else that's having to happen is an evolution of scaling things up. What works for a group of, 5 people in someone's backyard is very different from when we have Midsummer at Odenshof and we had 140 142 people there this year. So when you're doing a bloat with that many people, some things have to be adjusted as well. So as time goes on, I think our rituals get deeper and richer. There's more tradition to them. And yes, people, innovate and figure out what works. And if something works better, then we focus on it. And if something doesn't work, then we move on to something different.
So Mr. Steve McNally, who founded Asatru Folk Assembly, and his wife Sheila McNally. So what is their role in the organization? I think Sheila McNally is called a folk builder at large on the website.
So Sheila does a lot of things. First, since the AFA was founded back in 1995, Sheila has just poured herself into building the Asatru Folk Assembly. Currently, she does folk build at large, and she covers regions where we don't have a folk builder. And regions where we do, she helps out our folk builders to do that better. Sheila was kind of the original folk builder, the Asatru Folk Assembly in general. But she's also recently become a Githya, so she's an ordained priestess of our gods. But she's very involved, and Sheila puts in a lot of time and a lot of effort volunteering. She is the presiding Githya at Odenshof, so she organizes events and rituals at Odenshof, and she is really an invaluable asset to the AFA. Steve is retired. He shows up to Odenshof, and sometimes he comes to different events around the country, and is there to talk to people and to tell stories and to participate as much as he wants. But he's also got some of his own things he's trying to pursue. I'm sure he talked to you about his Votons network and various other projects he's working on. But he's very much an active member of the Asatru Folk Assembly, and it's a true honor to have him out at Odenshof to celebrate and to worship with us.
What are the future for AFA? What do we see in the future for the AFA?
Continued growth, continued success. I see us having hofs around the world. I'd like to see international hofs. I would like to see a hof in every state in the United States. I see that. I see a lot of success that way. I would like to see the Asatru Folk Assembly and Asatru in general be a known quantity that our people have access to, and not, some strange fringe thing that they stumble upon. And we see that more often. So to bring more of our people back to our gods and our folk would be really important. And the more we can do that, the more we can have membership living closer together, the more our communities will grow and be successful. So, yeah, I see hofs across the country and around the world.
I was wondering, 2020 has been a very extreme year, especially in America. Could you talk about how has the experience been as a white person in Nevada during this whole Corona crisis and all this Black Lives Matter and all these riots, and you also had a daughter through all this? How is it being a white person in Nevada in 2020?
Certainly I'm not going to lie. It's stressful and it's depressing to see what's happened to our country and to see what's happened to, the western part of our world. To watch people tearing down our history, tearing down statues, looting and pillaging with no consequence, and to have the media and all the voices out there disallow any white people from having any pride in ourselves it can seem devastating. The world outside is nothing like what I grew up with. It's nothing like what, generations of my ancestors would have understood. All of the great things that our people have accomplished are just being given away, and our history being willfully erased by our own people to try to, supplicate before people that aren't our folk. And I think that it's really tragic. I would rather other groups of people raise statues to their heroes than tear down statues to mine. And I think it's going to be ultimately very unfulfilling if your only sense of making yourself better is by trying to bring us down, I think that's never going to accomplish what they want. But that said, what I've found in 2020 is really great things with the Asatru Folk Assembly. As depressing as things are out there and whatever's going on with, the over-exaggerated precautions for coronavirus, where we've been separated and socially isolated, when we go to AFA events, there's none of that. We don't go to AFA events putting masks on and standing 6 feet apart. During the height of all of this, when we go to AFA events, we're there with our faces uncovered. We're there hugging, sharing from the same horn, worshiping our gods together. And that's been really nice because that's a piece of normalcy in a world that's very chaotic. When you come to an AFA event or you go to one of our hofs, you come home and you have family and everyone there gets it and has values that, don't seem foreign to the world of 50 years ago, but all of a sudden today you can't have. That's been a thing. But yeah, it's depressing and we're all waiting until they get done with this pretend response to coronavirus. I imagine maybe that'll look really different after our election. Yeah, we're waiting it out. It's stressful. It's been difficult because one of the things with the coronavirus is they've taken away everybody's support systems. You're not supposed to gather for religious gatherings. You're not supposed to go do any of the things that really bring people together and help them through hard times. You mentioned that I had a daughter during this. I did. We had a beautiful baby girl on April the 18th. And I was scared they wouldn't allow me in the hospital for her birth. Luckily, that didn't turn out to be the case. But it's been very isolating, and it's really shined a light that the media and a lot of forces out there in the world do not want us to be successful. They do not want us to get together, and they do not want us to have nice things. And that's all the more reason that we need to come together as a people, come together in a folk, and take care of our things, take care of our people, and build our family. And we've done that very successfully this year in the Asatru Folk Assembly. I mentioned in 2020, we got 2 new hofs, and that's a pretty big deal for us.
Yeah, that's definitely very impressive. Do you think this situation in America will escalate further and there could be some sort of civil war going on, or is it mostly will it die down if after the election? Is it mostly theater for the election? What do you think about that?
I think a lot of it's theater for the election, but I also think that it's very easy for theater to get out of control, especially when the puppets that you use don't know that that's what they're there for. I think it's very dangerous to get people so riled up with lies and untruth that they're rioting in the streets, because I think it's very hard to put that genie back in the bottle. We'll see. I'm very hopeful that things will go back to normal. I'm very hopeful that things will calm down. I'm very hopeful that the average American will be very tired of all of the freedoms we've lost during this coronavirus situation. And hopefully people will wake up and not allow that to happen again. I'm hopeful that people are so disgusted with the monument destruction and the riots and the complete lawlessness that they won't allow that to happen again. But you never know. I think the prospect of a civil war is probably much further off than people think. And one of the reasons is people are very, very comfortable. You don't really see a lot of civil warring happening when you can sit in your house and watch Netflix and Amazon Prime and have cable and eat any kind of food you want and have it delivered to your house. And, the average American lives like a king of 100 years ago. And I think that as long as we're very, very comfortable and have air conditioning and heating and, plenty of food and plenty of entertainment, it's very hard to picture some kind of huge, governmental upheaval. But it's my hope that we can get back to something that resembles normal so that we have good and fulfilling lives.
Yeah. So I saw some people some white people who have done like counter demonstration or counter political activities, like protecting statues and perhaps writing "All Lives Matter" on the sidewalk or something like that. Is that something the AFA could participate in the future or organize themselves?
I think it would depend. The AFA we're a church. We're a religious organization. We're not primarily politically focused. That doesn't prevent us from doing things to publicly stand up for our people by any means, but that's not our focus. I think that any of those kind of things, it's a matter of practicality of what's going to work and what's not going to work. What we don't want to do, that some of these demonstrations end up being, are a chance to show off or a chance to virtue signal. I'm all for us doing, whatever is practical and legal to protect statues, to protect history. And I think that it is a monumental travesty that having the audacity of saying all life matters. If you can't say that without being labeled a racist or a hater or a bigot, something's very wrong in the world. That's like the meme that went around, it's okay to be white. If you post a sign somewhere that says it's okay to be white, the media reports that as somehow hateful. And for it to be okay for our people to exist, being labeled as hate really should make all of us rethink the world that we're in and how we interact with it.
Yeah, definitely. It's getting a bit crazy out there.
Well, and I'm hoping normal people will wake up and see just how crazy it is. And I think some people are.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So, Sigtyr, do you have any more questions?
No, I don't. Actually, I think we covered it all.
So, is there anything you would like to say to our audience, Mr. Flavel?
Well, first, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. It's been an honor to be on your program. Anyone in your audience that is curious about Asatru or curious about the Asatru Folk Assembly, I would encourage you to go to our website, www.runestone.org, and check us out. There you can join there if you're interested. You can donate there if you're interested. We also are on Facebook. We are on Instagram, Asatru Folk Assembly. So if you want to, please reach out. Yeah, I'm assuming that you guys have a decent Scandinavian audience. Our folk builder for the Scandinavian region is Anders Nilsson. He can be reached at anilsson@runestone.org, and he would love to answer any questions you guys have that may be more local. But yeah, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you very much for your time. It's early Sunday morning in Nevada, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, well, thanks a lot, and many blessings to you and your family.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Goodbye.
All right, you're welcome, guys. Thank you for having me. You have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
You too.